business development program on Radio Masterclass. Masterclass is powered by Joy Business and brought to us by Goyle. Goyle Good Energy, Goyle Yenara Igedia. Masterclass is also brought to us by Lancaster University. They boast of having one of the only British university campus in all of West Africa. By all means, if you're thinking of tertiary education, think Lancaster University. Masterclass is also proudly brought to us by GCB. GCB, your bank for life. My name, as always, is Yabanafo, and I'm excited to be your host for today's edition of Masterclass. A very good afternoon also to my very good friend, Mr. Ronald Mate, who is the CISO of GCB. Last week, he took time out to spend some time here with us on the show, sharing with us 10 things that companies should be looking out for in protecting themselves in this digital age. And that conversation was exciting and interesting. Hopefully, at some point in the year, maybe we'll get the privilege of sitting again with Mr. Ronald Marty. But again, like all good things, that conversation did come to an end. And today we continue again with another exciting conversation. You recall all those times when you had a bit of money and you didn't know what to do with it, and you were asking questions about where do I place this money? Which one will bring me the greatest investment? Which one will bring me the minimum risk? Well, today, Masterclass brings to you a conversation that will seek to address that concern that you have. Here on Masterclass, we bring you conversations that you would otherwise have had to pay for. And we bring people of renown to share those conversations with us. Today, we'll be talking about portfolio construction and investment risk. It sounds like a lot of English, but trust me, it just means when you have a bit of money, where do you put it? And in making that decision, how do you make the decision so that you do it at a minimum risk and maximum return? Everybody has a bit of money they want to put somewhere for the future, whether you're saving it, whether you're putting it in treasury bills, whether you're buying some bonds, whether you are building a house to rent, wherever you are putting it, it's part of your investment portfolio. The finance people, they like to talk big English, but we'll break it down today on the show so that we can all understand and become better for it. Once again, you're welcome to this conversation. I'll be privileged to be in this conversation with the managing director of GCB Capital. Is in the person of Mr. Kofi Ewuku, and he has one of those resumes that when I grow up, I want to be like him. So Kofi is an investment banking global market expert and also a corporate banker with nearly 2 decades of experience in capital markets, in risk management, in syndications, and in project finance. He currently heads the GCB Capital Limited, the investment banking subsidiary of Ghana's largest bank, which is GCB. Kofi has led GCB Capital, a startup in landmark initiatives and transactions in advisory, debt capital, fund management, and housing solutions. Kofi holds a cross-continent MBA from the Fuqua Business School, Duke University, from the United States of America. He also has an LLB from Central University, and he has a BSc Administration from the University of Ghana. My guest for this afternoon is Mr. Kofi Ewuku. Kofi, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
When I read your CV, I feel like, Charlie, I should go back to school.
Oh, does it?
But Masterclass is happy to have you this afternoon.
My pleasure to be here.
Oftentimes you hear people talk about, have a bit of money, even in these hard times, there's an ironic thing. Even when things are hard, certain things will happen. People will always turn a small profit in their business or some revenue will come in. They will by all means pay school fees. They will have to buy food for their household. They will buy power. There are certain basic things that will happen. And when we say things are hard, things are not hard for everybody. Don't make the mistake and think that we are not all suffering.
Correct.
Some people are not suffering. They have money to place. How do they make these decisions in a way that brings them benefit and also has a spiral effect? Because the thing about investment also is that it's like pointing a finger. You get the benefit, but the people who get to work with your money also turn, a little benefit to themselves.
Absolutely
also.
correct, yes.
So it's not just you, it's you and everyone else in the process, which becomes communal and it's helpful.
It's an entire ecosystem.
Exactly.
Yes.
Today, I will refrain from using the technical terms. I'll leave that to you so that my listeners can also bring the conversation home, so that all my people who are listening to me in Makola and Abosokai, all the way from Ajingo the man, good afternoon to you. He likes to listen to the show.
Right.
He'll be able to understand that if he's got 5,000 Ghana cedis, if he's got 10,000 Ghana cedis, that rice seller across the road who has got 12,000 Ghana cedis, how can they make that 12,000 cedis grow for them so that they can get some extra meat on it, if you like? So let's start the conversation, introduce it, and then we get into the meat of it.
Very well. Thank you so much, Yao. And it's my pleasure to be here. And I particularly like how you positioned this whole conversation. We have sort of moved away from the talk about convincing people to invest. we're moving on. I mean, the best time to have that conversation, the best time to invest was yesterday.
Mm,
The second best time is today. So if you still need convincing to get into the habit of making investments, I'm afraid I late,
mm,
right?
mm,
So to speak. But let me start off by saying that this conversation is also particularly important because from where we sit, we had discovered that whilst the message to do investments has sunk in somewhat, people to a large extent have not had the other side of it. Beyond the decision to invest, what do you do? How do you do it? What should you look out for? I mean, there's always the risk factor, right? And so we acknowledge that that sort of conversation, we've not had enough of it. And so I'm particularly happy that we're talking in this direction. Also, you are aware that GCB Capital, in partnership with the government, has been working on the bailout for clients of defunct fund management companies whose licenses were revoked. Now, one of the learnings we have from dealing with these clients of the defunct firms is that many of them didn't exactly know what they were doing. It's good that they were into investing, but perhaps they could have benefited. And it's not just peculiar to them. This is happening because we are dealing with them. But I believe that even people who are investing with well-functioning assets now could still do with a bit of an understanding of what it is they are getting into. Have a full knowledge of what they are putting their money into, the potential risks, and what sort of expectations to have the return. It's not just a matter of putting X amount of money in a particular asset, but do you understand the asset? Are you aware of the potential risks that you could suffer? And on the flip side, yes, the return may be attractive, may be nice, but what drives our return? Do you know that a certain quantum of return comes with a certain level of risk? And are you prepared for that? So I'm happy we're going to have that conversation.
It's interesting you talk about the risks and understanding exactly what you're doing, and then you strategically place the return at the last point.
Yes.
Off air, before we came on, we have a conversation, and I think that for most people, let's say about 7 out of 10, being modest here, who go out to consider an investment, are thinking, "What's in it for me?"
Precisely. Precisely.
I dare say that there are a few people who even think the risk is for the fund manager to bear. It's for him to think about and not me, the investor. But that's what this conversation is going to highlight.
Absolutely.
That you are the carrier of your investment and you are the one placing the money. The loss hits you hardest
Absolutely.
than anyone else.
Absolutely.
And therefore, it's not just what's in it for me, but what risk am I taking to acquire that benefit that I'm looking at? And it's important to look at that. Yes.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So the whole conversation starts and ends with what are you doing? It's you. A professional fund manager might come in to help you along the way, right? Or guide you in a particular direction or the other. It's a service they render for a fee. But you must remain in the driver's seat. And so the fund manager's actions must even be driven by your preferences, your choices. But let's start. First of all, what is even investing? I mean, you can define investment in 1,000 different ways. But one that I particularly like is by a gentleman called Benjamin Graham. And he says that an investment operation is one which, after a thorough analysis, promises the safety of principal and an adequate return. And it doesn't end there. He goes on to say that operations not meeting these requirements are speculative. Yeah, now I dare say that there are too many of us who think we are doing investments, but we're actually just speculating. There are some key elements that go into it. The thorough analysis, the safety of principle. You just don't want to throw your money at something where you risk losing it. At the very minimum, don't lose your principal. You may lose some expected returns, right? And then beyond that also, an adequate return. The return should be adequate. All too often in our market, and we've seen various schemes come and go, but people always jump at it. Our market seems to have a preference for, hey, I hear there's some deal here or there's some investment package here, this product's there that will give you 30, 50, 70% in a month's time, and we want to jump at that without a thorough analysis, right? That is speculation and not investment.
In fact, you talked about adequate return.
Absolutely.
Again, off air, we're having this conversation and we're laughing about it. that there are few people in our economy today who transact business and they're actually making losses if you take a look at the books, but they think they're making profits. And I'll explain why I say that. If you took $100,000 to Dubai, let's say you're into baby items,
Right.
and the value of that $100,000, a professional can tell you that $100,000 can make you $150,000. That's the strength of that 100,000, taking
Right.
into account every economic factor, macro
Right.
and micro,
All in.
is $150,000.
So
And
you have a 50% return.
exactly, and you take the 100,000 and you go and buy baby clothes because your sister is into mother care,
Right.
and you come back and you sell and you make $130,000. I wish to submit to you that you have declared a loss and you have not gained an adequate return. You may consider your principal and the 30,000 on it as being on top of the principal, and therefore it's not exactly a loss in terms of financial computing. But if it is less than your the maximum optimum possibility of that 100,000, what would you call that? Would that be an inadequate return?
Well, it could be one of two things. It may be inadequate in that it's a suboptimal return. That is
That's
after
the word,
factoring in everything.
suboptimal.
Exactly. That is after factoring in everything. Or it may actually be a loss because if you do an all-in analysis, and we talked about thorough analysis in Benjamin Graham's definition, the all-in analysis expects you to turn a certain minimum return. So if it's below that, and you now have to factor in your costs and expenses, then you would have made a loss. So that's also a possibility. I mean, it's one of two things. Yep.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, the important thing is, number one, you yourself, what you're getting into, it must involve some present sacrifice. Typically, it's money, but it may also be even time or some effort. Right. If you're investing, you make that present sacrifice. As an investor, also, you will definitely keep an eye on the return, right? And like we said, it should be adequate. It should not be outrageous. I mean, there are schemes that are offered to you, and sometimes you just need to take a step back and wonder if you are really prepared to take on that risk. But all too often we jump at it because it looks too exciting, right? If you're investing, you should also have a view to grow your assets, right? To grow what it is that you're doing with the money, or your objective may be just to earn some regular routine income from it, or perhaps both. But you should have worked all of that out thoroughly, and you should know how that's going to happen over time. Ultimately, you invest to do wealth creation, right? That's why there's a distinction between savings and investment. You don't want to be putting your money in something that is perhaps just protecting the corpus or the principal without really growing. Even if you do not have the intention of doing a value or a growth investing, but looking for some income, there should be even that income should be flowing in regularly, and when all is factored in, you are creating wealth. So that's important. And then finally, the critical questions to ask: what is your investment objective? It is not simply about what somebody is offering. What are you as an investor looking for? What do you hope to earn from your investment? What asset classes are you interested in? And we'll talk about risk tolerance as we go along. I mean, there is risk. We'll talk about what risk is, but beyond us understanding the risk, what are individual risk tolerance levels? Because like we said, it's all about you, not the fund manager, not the investment advisor or the investment professional. So what's your personal risk tolerance? We'll talk about all of those things. So perhaps if you permit, I would just want to talk a bit quickly about the common investment assets, because that's not really what we want to be talking about. We want to talk more on the risk side of things.
Let's go ahead.
But commonly in Ghana, we tend to have fixed income investments. These are your regular treasury bills that people are familiar with, plus some others that are typically issued by bank and non-bank financial institutions, certificates of deposit, fixed deposits, etc., all fall under fixed income. I'll talk a bit about them. There is equities or shares. There are collective investment schemes, which many of us are familiar with. Typically, we talk about mutual funds or unit trusts. And there's real estate. These tend to be the main ones in Ghana. But the others, which you can lump under another class called alternatives. And alternatives are not a finely defined class. What may be considered an alternative investment in Ghana may be a mainstream regular investment to someone
Another
else in
place.
Senegal, for instance, or what even may be considered an alternative investment to me here in Accra. If I was staying by the beach in Ada with in some nice luxury resorts, I probably will have some other asset class as the main investment and something else in my
Yeah.
alternatives. So there are all of those, and I've mentioned a few these ones. What is fixed income investments in the first place, which is one of the commonest? So fixed income investments are typically interest paying, right? You give your money to some entity, usually the government, in the form of treasury bills. When you buy treasury bills, you are lending money to the
The
government.
government.
The government is borrowing from you, the investor. It's all about you. You are center stage, right? So the government now makes a promise that they will pay you some return, typically for the shorter end, and I mean the short-term investments, the treasury bills, 91 day, 182, etc. The investment is sort of the return. Sorry, is sort of paid to you upfront. In that, if you want to buy 100,000 CD investment, you may commit upfront maybe 95,000, and then on maturity you get 100. So upfront you have gotten that benefit, right? But in the longer term instruments where we move into bonds, and bonds have become quite popular in Ghana lately, and I'm happy about that. Until some time, not too long ago, we knew treasury bills only.
True.
Now you have people walking and want to buy
Yeah,
bonds,
cocoa
and I'm
bonds,
happy we
government
have
of
it
Ghana bonds.
exactly. Sovereign bonds. I mean, well, once it's issued by the government, it's sovereign. And then there's the corporate bonds. A number of corporate entities have issued bonds. Some are listed on the fixed income market, and then of course, so you can do that. Those are a bit more long term, and then beside the promise of the return, fixed income investments come with some certainty that addresses the question that you alluded to earlier. People want to know how much will I earn, right? It's called fixed income because at the time you're buying, it's a 5-year bond that promises to pay you 17% per annum. So you know for sure that you're getting the 17% return annually. So it's fixed, right? Unlike the other asset class that I'll move on to presently, like shares. Shares have also been quite popular in our market, and we've had a stock exchange that has been active for several years now. People have done share investing for some time now. Shares, unlike fixed income instruments, do not guarantee or commit to provide you a certain defined return. You can buy a fixed income and a bond that says you're getting 16% per annum on it. When you buy shares, there is no such defined guarantee, or there's no defined promise. However, it comes with its own pluses as well. When you buy shares, you become a part owner of the company into which you have invested, the company whose shares you have bought, whether privately or publicly on the stock exchange. Now, in return, you get a promise of earning dividend. When the company does well in a year, they declare what we call dividend. They share a bit of the profit to you as a shareholder, as an investor in that company, right? There is also the opportunity to earn what we call capital gain. If you buy your Banafo company share at one CD, be very good at giving you returns in terms of dividends and capital gain and growth of the value of your investment over time. It is not guaranteed. So shares are deemed to be a bit more risky compared to fixed income, right? But we can go into the nuances of it. There are pluses and minuses to all of that. And then another important asset class in our market are what we call the collective investment schemes. This covers the whole set of unit trust investments, mutual fund investments, and they have been quite popular in Ghana for some time. There are some that are even household names,
Mm.
right? People even refer to some mutual funds by a particular name.
Name.
Yes,
Yes.
so people have been used to that. Now, there are interesting notes about mutual funds, and it's particularly good for the conversation we are having now,
Right.
because I know we are talking to a wide listenership and viewership, right? Not everybody may have the 50,000 or 100,000 plus to do certain
Mm.
bespoke investments where you can get a manager to actually do a portfolio for you, or even on your own with a bit of knowledge to do something by yourself. But you could always also, with a little token, sometimes in the tens or just hundreds of CDs, invest in a mutual fund or a unit trust, right? And what these do is that they pool funds, they collect funds from various investors, and then place that money in selected investment managed professionally by the fund manager,
Right.
so that you are spared the headache of or the burden of what to buy, what not to buy,
Making
when
the
to
wrong
buy,
decisions.
exactly, making wrong decisions. All of that is handled by a professional. And then mutual funds also tends to have an identity of their own.
Mm.
And so, if I may harp back a bit to the bailout I referred to
By
earlier,
all means, yeah.
people would realize that whereas people that were invested in the collapsed firms directly um, are being managed in a particular way by us at GCB Capital. People that were invested in mutual funds have simply been transferred to other fund managers, because the mutual fund, as a safety feature, is
Right.
a separate legal entity on its own. So if the manager went down,
Mm-hmm.
all that needed to be done was for a new manager to take over and run it, right?
And that gives some kind of security to the investor as well,
It sure
doesn't it?
does.
Yes.
It sure does. Yes. So that is it. And like I said, there are alternatives also which could cover everything from real estate through there are ETFs. ETFs are called exchange traded funds. These are funds that pool money just like the collective investment schemes I described, but then they are also listed on the stock exchange as an added security feature. So there are ETFs. You could also do private equity or venture capital investing. You could do commodity, for instance. You could even do livestock. I mean, these
Mm.
are all investments that
I mean, a lot of
people could do.
people would are putting money into farming,
Yes,
animal farming lately. A lot of
right.
people are doing into fish farming,
Absolutely,
into
yes.
animal farming, piggeries, and all that. I've got a few friends who are, and the thing is that people are looking to put their money somewhere, and depending on what your orientation or the information available to you is,
Mm.
you choose to go in a certain direction. So it's interesting that we're talking about all the other alternative investments
Yeah.
and the fact that they are also equally considered under the investment umbrella.
Yes, I mean they all fall under the wide gambit of investments. And so to move on from your point, when you have knowledge or a bit of knowledge of what all these various asset classes are, the next question then is, how do you select what to put your money in? Because, like I
Exactly.
said, right now
How
we
do
are
you
at the
make the
point.
decision?
How do you make that decision? There's a number of factors you consider. Ultimately, I mean, you can always talk to us. I mean, the smart
Mm,
ladies and gentlemen at GCP Capital
mm,
and similar places can guide you.
mm,
But we want the conversation to be positioned such that you walk to a fund manager or an
mm.
investment advisor with, with some capacity to ask questions, so that
Right.
you help them help you do the right thing.
Mm,
It is you in the center,
mm.
right? So this whole conversation we are having is to equip people with tools around some of these things. So how do you select the asset? You don't just take somebody's word for it. So somebody even proposes a particular investment vehicle for you. Your questions should be around who is behind it, right? Um, how is that industry performing?
Mm-hmm.
What is the history? How have things happened in that industry? Um, what's the performance of that particular investment asset?
What's that track record?
Track record of management of the industry on a wider level of that particular investment vehicle. And the track record bit can be tricky, because that is where somebody could come to you and say, well, this investment asset is doing what 50% per month, right? And they can demonstrate some track record. But do you want to just take that, or you want to ask a few other questions, right? 50% compared to what? What is the industry you're operating in? What is the wider market, the economy, the Ghanaian economy you are operating in? How are they able to promise 50%, knowing where inflation is, knowing where policy rates is, knowing where even comparable investment assets like treasuries are? Granted that treasuries may pay less, right, because they are deemed to be the safe investments, right? So you want to use the treasury as a benchmark. That at the very minimum, we as fund managers, we promise we will try to manage your funds and pay you treasury plus a certain return, right? So do that comparison. What are the relative rates? If you're doing something like real estate, you also want to talk about things like location, right? You don't just jump into it, but where is it going to be? If it's a real estate investment and not your home to live in, then you want to earn some good rental income. What's your rental yield going to be if I locate it in a particular place versus that other place, right? Then there's an all-important risk factor, which we'll come to presently. So you have to consider all of these. There are tax implications for some assets. There are some assets you put your money in, it has peculiar tax implications. There are some that the Honorable Minister will announce every year on the budget reading that these ones are tax-free, right? So all of those considerations, what is your own horizon? How long do you want to invest? It's not just a matter of, yes, I want to do investing. How long are you prepared to go? It feeds into your risk tolerance also. It feeds into other factors like even your age. Age should determine whether it makes sense, and I use sense advisedly, to do one particular asset and not the other. So you have to consider all of those.
It's interesting. It's interesting you mention all those points because you see, even before I look at the example of the real estate, for everyone who has invested and lost money, their investment decision was good until it wasn't. And so, I mean, when it comes to things like track record, people would typically shy away from areas where they have little knowledge of. And that's why we always say here on Masterclass that there are people who are trained to do specific things. Don't try to be a jack of all trades. Seek professional help. We're talking here about investment. There are investment professionals who will help you and ask the right questions. Because we don't know, we take the first set of information that comes to us about track record, and then the companies are good until they are not, because we didn't ask the right question. So the learning point here is that don't just throw your money at investments because your friend is doing it or because someone is doing it and is yielding good profit. The variable in every investment conversation is you. Yep. You are the variable in every investment conversation.
Spot on.
And when I say variable, it means that the set of circumstances that surround you, your risk appetite, how long your money can be gone for, if you lose the money, what are the things that will be lost. All of those things are different because you are different. So you can't be comparing yourself to person B and saying, oh, but Asimesi did it and it worked for him.
Which is all too often the case.
And that's why, because you can't anticipate all of these things, talk to a professional. Yes. So that you can make the right decision. So you don't go with your head over. There are people who made certain decisions, I mean, apart from the fact that they were greedy, they didn't have the right set of information. And their hands are on their head, because things went bust. There are people who also asked the right questions in that same period. And they saw through.
Yes.
And therefore did not make the decision. The difference between the two of you is that one asked the right set of questions, the other didn't. So when you are taking your hard-earned money somewhere, ask the right questions.
Spot on. I mean, you just hit the nail right on the head. You need to ask the right questions. Because the point is, you don't need to you don't need to be an investment professional. You don't need to be knowledgeable about everything. But you also don't have to walk into a fund manager or some investment advisor's office expecting to take only what they tell you, hook, line, and sinker, right? You don't want to do that. That is one of the reasons why we are doing what we're doing today, having this conversation and then telling you that look.
I'll tell you what, it's getting really interesting, and I want us to get interactive. Right. Let's take a quick message from our sponsors, and when we come back, we can open the phone lines and then continue to share so that our listeners can also be a part of it. This is Masterclass here on your Superstation Joy 99.7. We're spending time with Mr. Kofi Ewuku, Managing Director, GCB Capital, and he's sharing some thoughts with us on investment tips. You have some money, you want to put it away. What are the decisions you make? What are the questions you ask? We're going to be getting interactive, but before we do that, we'll take a quick message from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Your favorite on-air business development program, Joy Business Masterclass, is in session, and you can interact with us on Facebook via the Joy 99.7 FM or Joy Business pages. If you tweet, the handle is at Joy 997 FM or at Joy Business GH. Don't forget to hashtag JB Masterclass. You can also call us on 0302 216541 or send your questions and contributions through to the WhatsApp number 0551 111997, and our facilitators will address your concerns. Attention everyone, class is in progress.
Welcome back. If you've just tuned in, this is Masterclass. My name, as always, is Yabanafo, and I'm happy to be your host for today's edition of Masterclass. We're spending time in the studio with Mr. Kofi Ewuku, who's the Managing Director, GCB Capital, and he's sharing some good information with us on things to look out for before you place your money, portfolio construction and investment risks. What are the questions that you don't ask, for which reason sometimes we get our fingers bent? All of those here on Masterclass. We're interactive right now. Numbers to call 0302 216 541. That's 0302 216 541. Pick up that phone, give us a call. If you're driving, please do not make a call while you're driving, because we definitely want you to arrive alive. If you're driving, just make sure you park off and give us a call, 0302 216 541. Or you can also send us your comments on 055 1111 997. Goyle has some great news for us if you have any motor vehicle of any kind. Goyle is rewarding all of its prepaid Go-Card customers with up to 2% discounts per litre on all fuels. You can also enjoy discounts on lubricants at oil Goyle stations nationwide. So join the Go Club by visiting Goyle stations or offices, or go to the Goyle website, registration.goyle.com.gh. Goyle, good energy. Goyle, ya yedium. GCB personal loans. With a GCB personal loan, salaried workers can meet all their financial obligations with a smile, whether you want to address issues of your educational fees or urgent medical expenses or pop-up expenses or bills or home makeovers or renovations or even vacations or that holiday you've been thinking about for a very long time. By all means, do get in touch with the nearest GCB branch, or you can call them on 0800 422 422 for a GCB personal loan. GCB, your bank for life. We're interactive right now, 0302 216 541 or 055 1111 997. I think I have a caller on the line already. Good afternoon, you're welcome to Masterclass. Your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Nee, calling from Asylum Down.
Good afternoon, Nee. How is Asylum Down this afternoon?
It was very hot.
Very hot. Nee, talk to me.
Okay, I need advice.
Right.
Okay, all right. So this thing happened recently. My wife wants to buy a car. She goes to a showroom, and then she gets a quote. She gives the quote to her company, and I think it's above what the company was giving. The company asks her to top up.
Right.
But to top up, you have to pay it to the car company first. The balance so that when the company will give you the rest of the money.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so let's say you have to pay $5,000, and then the company pays the rest, and then the company tells you that okay, all right, it's in dollars. So today the dollar is 6.5. Down, okay, it's 6.5 to the dollar. So come and pay $6,000 of that equivalent. Then you go and pay that. Down the line, like 3 weeks down the line, there's an issue with the lady's husband and the owner of the company. Then, for some reason, can the company say they are not going to sell the car to the woman again? And if yes, in paying back the money, what do they have to do? Do they have to pay back the money in exchange rate at the same conversion that they did previously?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's a very valid question. Nee, please keep listening. We will definitely answer that question. Ms. Ewuku has made a mental note of it. I've got another caller on the line. Good afternoon. You're welcome to Masterclass. Your name and where you're calling from.
Good afternoon. My name is James Apia.
Good afternoon, James. Where are you calling from this afternoon?
I'm calling from Asaliboche.
How is Asaliboche this afternoon, James?
It's fantastic.
Beautiful. Talk
Just
to
that
me, James.
we are looking for a job.
It is well, James. Talk to me.
Okay, so I wanted to find out if GCB Capital is employed.
Sorry, I missed that. Please.
Is GCB Capital employed?
You mean, are they employing? Are they recruiting?
Yes, please.
Right. Okay, so Mr. Wuku will answer that question here on the show as well. Okay, so let's start with the last question. He wants to know
Right.
if you're recruiting.
Presently, no. We've
Okay.
done some recent recruitments, but we filled our vacancies at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
But James, you never know when. You see, the thing is, when they are recruiting, they won't put it. They won't come and sit on Joy FM and say it. So go to the office tomorrow morning and submit your application. You can ask to see Mr. Wuku. Say you heard him on Joy FM, and so you are bringing your CV to his personal attention, so that when there's a job opening,
As
then,
and when there's an opening.
yes,
Yes.
then he may consider you for the shortlist. But then the second
Alright.
question.
Yes.
Long story short, someone makes a purchase agreement with a company. Part of the payment is supposed to be made from another party.
Yes.
But the payment is dollar denominated,
Yeah.
and I'm sure the payment was made in CD. So then the rate keeps changing.
Right.
At some point, this whole business truncates and it can no longer continue.
Yes.
If a refund is to be made, the question he's asking is, number one, can the company decide that they won't sell the car again? And number two, if they decide they won't sell again and they are paying back, at what rate should they be paying back?
No, so I found that to be a particularly interesting question because if I heard him well, I think the answer will be easily discernible from the legal documentation around
Exactly.
it. I mean, some of these are always, these things are typically spelled out. Even in the event that there is no specific provisions in the documentation addressing that matter, there should be a way to. It's more of a private contract arrangement and the terms therein than a general investor in question. What maybe could be handled from the public angle is if there's exchange rate movement and it's now moved adversely against one partner. Again, I think it's a question of legal documentation and what the lawyers.
Yeah, let me just weigh in
envisage
there.
that.
I mean,
Yes.
I think that I agree with you entirely. And this is Nee from Asylum now.
Yes.
Nee, if there was an SLA, a sales and purchase agreement, or an SPA, sorry,
yes.
covering the purchase, then in the SPA, your lawyer would have made sure that these terms and conditions were agreed. I'm assuming that there was no SPA. If there was no SPA, then it's open to negotiation and it becomes a subject of arbitration at some point. If they are paying, can they say they will not sell again? I suppose that if the product is unavailable, they at some point will ask you to wait, and if the wait is too long, then you may decide that you are going to discontinue.
Yeah, definitely by making some payments, there's been some
Exactly.
commitments made, so there are obligations that have been created.
Exactly.
And it will go down to what the legal position is between the parties.
Precisely. And if they're paying you back, I suppose that it should be at the same rates that you also pay them, so that there's no loss in there. I'm not sure if that sort of answers the question for you. Let's get some other calls coming through. 03022165441. What investment decisions have you made recently? Which ones are you thinking of making? Who are you talking to? What questions have you asked? Have you looked at all the risks? Do you know someone who has made investment decisions and they've made the wrong ones? Pick up that phone. Let's share the experiences. The reason we do this is because life is too short to make all the mistakes ourselves. So let's learn from other people's mistakes so that we can all become better for it. 03022165541. You can send us your comments on 05511111997. We're also streaming live on Facebook. And so if you have any comment, you're watching us on Facebook, you can also send your comments to Facebook and my production team will make sure that we read them. I'll be picking up your comments on WhatsApp very shortly. So do send them to 05511111997. Kofi, let's keep the conversation going.
Right.
While we wait for the phone lines to
Okay.
ring. Yes.
Good, we'll do. So there was one final point I wanted to make before the break, and that was that had to do with discipline. See, when you have decided on what to do and you factored in all your risk considerations, and we'll talk about risk majorly shortly, there is also the element of discipline that is required. And I studied under a gentleman once called Reginald France, and who used the word stick-to-itism. You work it out.
Stick-to-itism.
Yes, you work
Please
it out.
hold
and you
that thought
stick
for
to
me.
it.
I think I have a
Yes.
caller on the line.
Yes.
Good afternoon. You're welcome to Masterclass. Your name and where you're calling from.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I'm Eddie calling from the
Sorry, please. Your name is and where you're calling from?
I'm Eddie.
Bridget.
Eddie.
Abe. Okay. And you're calling from?
Eddie calling from Dansuma.
Right.
Okay.
How's Nasuman this afternoon?
My girlfriend now is there.
Beautiful.
Thank you
Beautiful.
all for your good system. God bless you.
Right. Talk to me.
Please, I want to find out. I have 6,000 now. And I want to invest. Please, what should I do? And what relationship lies me? Because I need advice for the one. And where can I go? Like, thank you so much.
Okay, I caught a part of your question. You have some money you want to invest, $1,000, I think it is,
Yes,
and
yes,
you want to know which areas are recommended for you. Is that a
yes,
question?
yes.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Please keep listening, and then we'll try and answer that question. So she's got a fair bit of money, and
Right.
and she wants to put it into investment.
Right.
I suppose that you would have wanted a further conversation to ask all the questions.
Certainly. So, AB, I would always need to have a deeper conversation. Need to know, number one, what your objective is. What do you hope to get from this investment? Are you looking to just grow the value over time, or are you looking for some regular income from it, or are you looking for a mix of both? It will also be good to know what your risk tolerance is. How much risk can you take? Risk tolerance is very interesting. I mean, you consider various things like the source of the money, how much time you have to invest it, what other plans you have for it, maybe further down the line. As I indicated earlier, even your age is an important consideration. So there's a lot more we need to find out before we can determine what would suit best a particular person's investments objective.
But assuming that it's on the I mean, what recommend without being too specific to AB's question, if she has $1,000, where is the best place to put $1,000 today?
The best place is the place that best suits the various things I talked about. There is never a general answer.
So there's no one size fits all.
There isn't.
Unfortunately,
There
AB,
isn't,
you need to get in touch with us. Like I said, 0800 422 422. Ask to speak to Mr. Kofi Ewuku, and he'll be happy to have a further conversation with you. Unfortunately, he's unable to just prescribe where you should put your money, which is what we've been doing wrong, and that's what we're trying to teach against this afternoon. I've got a question on WhatsApp. This one says, at age 60, which investment medium would you recommend for 10,000 Ghana cedis? Do I need to invest at all? Rex Odoi of Adenta. Good afternoon, Rex, to you.
Right, and good afternoon for me too, Rex. At 60, I think it's a bit safer. Now I have an age bracket to work with, right? And typically we would want to lean towards being a bit more conservative. The older we are, I mean, 60 is not when you start taking aggressive risks. And so, again, without the benefit of all the additional info, because I mean, you could be 60 and still even more risk aggressive than somebody who is in his 20s. You never know. I mean, these things are not a straitjacket. So, but all things considered, generally speaking, I would tell somebody 60 up to stay on the less aggressive side of investing, so more in the government papers, the treasury bills and treasury bonds. Even if you want to do something longer term, you can still find government instruments, bonds that can go that travel as long as even 40 years plus, right? So that is what I will conservatively advise with the limited information we have.
Right. What's our takeout from our conversation today? I know that we have the privilege of coming back to continue this conversation next week, but what should we remember from today's conversation? We have tried to take away the test aspect of it and make it very homey so that our listeners can appreciate it much better. But what should we remember from today's conversation?
Two things. Number one, every investment decision has to have you in the center of it. I mean, you should be in the driver. You should be in the driving seat. And on that, I'll actually make a quote from Ayn Rand, a philosopher, who said, "Money is only a tool. It will take you wherever you wish, but it will not replace you as a driver." So take out number one, you. Now, following from that is ask questions.
Ask questions. Yes. Wonderful. This has been Masterclass here on the Superstation Joy 99.7. We'll be spending time with Mr. Kofi Ewuku, Managing Director at GCB Capital, and he's been sharing thoughts with us on where to place money. What amount of money do you have? How much do you want to place? Where do you want to put it? What are the questions to ask? And he's drawing our attention to the fact that we shouldn't just follow blindly what other people are doing, but ask questions, because the greatest variable in every investment decision is you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully, we're back on your radio again, same time next week, to continue this conversation with Mr. Kofi Ewuku on further thoughts on where to place money and how to do your investments. My name, as always, is Yabanafo. This has been Masterclass. We'll see you same time next week.